Hi guys, Jackie with Famished Farm. I'm back this week with my recipe stash, but this week it's a little different. I have 3 HelloFresh or Blue Apron recipe cards. These are recipes that when we received the meal kits, we really liked these and I kept the recipes. Now I'm going to see, can I recreate these with ingredients that I can find that I might have in my pantry and still be happy with the recipes? We're going to find out this week. From Blue Apron, we have a chicken piccata with fresh linguine, pasta, and garlic chives. I didn't have fresh linguine, nor did I have garlic chives. See how I modified this, and let's see if it worked out. Sweet as honey chicken. From HelloFresh, a creamy dill chicken. And this one we did pretty good as far as ingredients. Let's see how we liked it the second time around. So let's get cooking. Chicken piccata, what a classic. I've never made it from scratch until receiving this recipe in a Blue Apron meal kit a decade ago or so. Back when I was doing craft shows in the super busy fall time, I just didn't have time to think. And so one of the things I gifted myself was several months of Blue Apron and HelloFresh. And I enjoyed it very much. And this is one of those recipes that we definitely kept. So you will see I started off with a little pile of garlic. I've got my lemon that I'm zesting here. And because I don't have garlic chives, I'm just going to use a little bit of onion, thinly sliced and chopped. And I also don't have fresh linguine, so I'm just using a box of Walmart pasta. We're going to lightly salt the water and a little bit of pepper too. And just cook it till it's done to your liking. And I've washed and dried a bunch of homegrown parsley, and the first half of it I'm going to de-stem it and then I'm going to chop it. And then the second half of the parsley I'm just going to de-stem it and put that in a separate dish, and that will be used to finish the dish. And then that lemon we zested, we're just going to quarter it, and I do take a couple of seconds here and I take the seeds out too. Then I opened up a new bottle of capers, and I'm just trying to use a tablespoon in a very small opening of the jar. I'm going for about 2 tablespoons, and then I'm going to just roughly chop them just in that little dish. Back over to the stove top, I've taken out some chicken. These are just breast, and I've cut them. I actually cut them thin, and then I'm going to use just basically a package out of the freezer. So it's more than the 2 chicken cutlets the recipe called for. We'll salt and flour the cutlets, and then we've got a couple tablespoons, 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour on this plate, and we're just going to bread the cut pieces of chicken and dredge them through the flour and then right into our cast iron. Do that with all of your pieces of chicken. You're going for a nice, basically golden brown and cooked through. So 3 to 5 minutes. I definitely went on the longer end of the spectrum because these were thicker chicken breast. Our pasta, I'm just testing a piece that is done to my liking. So I am going to move it over to my sink where I've got my colander. I'll drain that, and then I'm going to rinse this with cool water so we can get it to stop cooking. Back on the stove top, the timer's gone off, so we're going to go ahead and flip our 3 chicken breasts here. And they've got a nice sear on that first side, and it's definitely going to be cooked through in the 5 minutes. And then this part of the recipe, you're going to add a pat of butter. You're going to add half of the butter to the pan and just let your meat sear in that butter. The recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of chicken demi-glaze. And I don't have that, but I do have this better than bouillon chicken base, so I'm going to use that instead. But I don't quite have 3 tablespoons, so I'm going to get what I can out of this container And then I'm going to put a little water in it and try to get the rest of it out. We're going to be pretty close, though. It looks like that looked to be pretty close to 2 tablespoons there. So here we'll come back with the water and just see if we can get the rest of that goodness out of the jar. Then just give that all a little mix. Get your butter and your chicken base kind of mixed together. Then you're going to squeeze half of the lemon over your chicken and into the sauce. And then add that cut up parsley and just try to mix that together as best you can. Then I'm going to take it off the heat and cover it just so that it stays warm. In the pan we cook the pasta in, we're going to add a little bit of oil, and then our aromatics here. We're going to put in the garlic and the onion. Again, I don't really know what garlic chives are. Is that just the stalk from the garlic? We're going to use a little bit of onion, so we're taking a little bit of inspiration, in quotes, from the ingredients we have on hand. Then we're going to add our lemon zest. And you want this to become aromatic. Give that a stir. You're going to cook it 2 to 4 minutes. Then you'll add back in your pasta. Give it a mix. We'll get our cheese. And you're just going to go for a few tablespoons of Parmesan. Stir that up. Add your remaining butter and mix that in too. And if you have any of the pasta water reserved, go ahead and add that if you feel you need it for the sauciness of your noodles here. Now, instead of garnishing the dish with the lemon wedges and the parsley, I'm just going to go ahead and add that right into the pasta. That'll give that a nice flavor and it will look great too. So I'm just going to add the remaining lemon wedges, that parsley. Mix that up. Now, here's the only thing I wish I had done differently. I taste this and I decide it could use a little more salt. But guess what? The capers have plenty of saltiness to them. I'm adding pepper too. And I did not need to do that step. I kind of wish that I had just left it the way it was. Both Rod and I thought it was a little too salty, and I could have left out the salt on the chicken and the salt in the boiling pasta water and the salt I just added to the cooked pasta. But all in all, super delicious chicken piccata, easy to make. It was very fast to make too. That's another super great thing about these HelloFresh and Blue Apron meal kits. They're generally done in 30 minutes and you have a restaurant quality meal that we will make again and again. Definitely 2 thumbs up on this one, guys. So this Swedish honey chicken was really good the first time around, so we're hoping we can recreate it. And of all the recipes, this one is kind of typical. I don't stock usually white wine vinegar, nor do I usually have chicken stock concentrate, which I think is like chicken base. So we're just going to go with things we've got. Here I'm starting with my 2 cloves of garlic, and I'm using my mincer. Then we're going to go ahead and we've washed and dried this lime, and we're just going to quarter it. And then I've got a little bulb of ginger in my freezer, and I'm going to pull that out of the freezer. And actually I remembered to do it, so it is thawed. And I'm going to thinly slice it, and then I'm going to mince it. And then more chicken breast with this recipe from my big bag of Walmart humongous chicken breast. I usually cut them in half. I'm just going to drain those on a paper towel, and then we'll pat them dry. Then the recipe calls for seasoning on both sides of your chicken. So I'm going to do it on the side that's showing here first, just salt and pepper. And then when I add it to the pan, I'll get the other side. And you're going to do this use whatever pan you like. They suggest a large pan with a drizzle of oil over medium-high heat. I just happen to be using my favorite IKEA non-stick wok here. It's just my favorite pan. And you're just going to cook these until they're browned and cooked through. So it says 4 to 5 minutes per side. I definitely do that on the longer end of things because this chicken is usually going to be bigger than what the HelloFresh meal kit would have provided. You want a nice sear on both sides, so that's what I'm attempting here to get this guy turned over. And yeah, nice sear on both sides. And then remember, if you choose to, go ahead and season again on this side. Now, when your chicken breasts are cooked through, just set them on a plate and set them to the side. I take my cover from the wok and just set that over the plate to keep the chicken breast warm. Then to the same pan, we're gonna just deglaze the pan with a little bit of olive oil and cook our aromatics at the same time. So the ginger and the onion or ginger and the garlic are in the pan now, and you're just going to cook that till it's fragrant, about a minute. And then the one ingredient that I don't have is white wine vinegar, so I'm just going to use my red wine vinegar to substitute, which I think is a great substitute in this recipe. Both were good. This one will do just fine. And the other thing that I don't have for this recipe is chicken stock concentrate, but I do have really good chicken bone broth. And so I'm just going to add that, but without the 2 tablespoons of water that it calls for. I think I added about a 1/4 cup of the chicken, frozen chicken broth, bone broth, and then a couple tablespoons of soy sauce. I use light soy sauce. Here's the honey going in too. And we're just going to stir this, and you're going to keep it on the heat, just simmering until it thickens. You want this to get a glaze-like consistency, and so it takes several minutes for that to kind of reduce down and thicken up. Once it's to the consistency that you like, you're going to go ahead and add back in your chicken. And then flip it over and coat both sides of your chicken. Let it just rest in the pan for a bit. The recipe calls for fresh green beans. I've just put a pack of frozen cut green beans in the microwave, but we are going to prepare them just like the recipe called for. So we've got a tablespoon of butter, some salt and pepper, and then a squeeze from that lime. Mix those up, and guys, your dinner is ready. This recipe, guys, is another keeper. Both Rod and I love this. It's quick. It's, under a 30-minute prep time. It's just delicious. Full meal, green beans, rice, chicken, and a little bit of lime juice for garnish. This was delicious. And I especially like this one because while I might not have exactly the ingredients on hand, everything in my pantry I can make work for this recipe, and it turns out a result that was just as good as the original. And rounding out our trio of chicken dishes, creamy dill chicken. This one, I bet you have everything you need in your refrigerator except for maybe the chicken stock concentrate. And again, just use chicken broth, chicken stock, bone broth like I did on the previous recipe. We're going to start by peeling, washing, and then chopping some potatoes. And guys, I wanted a few leftovers, so I'm doing more potatoes than Rod and I would normally eat on a given night. So here I'm going to go ahead and chop up these 4 potatoes. Those are going to go into the oven at 450 degrees where you'll roast them for 22 to 25 minutes. And I know it was somewhere in there. I'm not sure if it was closer to 22 minutes for me or the 25. You'll drizzle them with some olive oil, salt and pepper them, and just be sure to toss them halfway through the cooking time. And quick as that, the first of your 3 components for this night's dinner is on the way to being done. Be sure to set your timer if you're like me and forget. I've taken some more chicken breast out of the freezer. This is the ugly side of the chicken breast after I cut the pretty side off. So this night is not going to look as pretty as the other nights, but you're going to end up kind of slicing the chicken anyway, so it really doesn't make any difference. We're going to pat those dry and then season with salt and pepper. And you can do what I usually do. Put them in your pan. I'm using my IKEA wok with a little bit of oil in it. The side that you just seasoned, put down, and then you can re-season the other side if you choose to. And a lot of times I only do the one side. Just depends on how thick the meat is and, you know, how busy I am, I think. And then I'm just going to swirl that oil around the pan to make sure all the chicken gets a little bit of it. You'll cook until no longer pink in the center, 4 to 6 minutes per side. And once you're done cooking, same thing, you're going to take these out of the pan, set them aside, and I put the lid for the wok on top of them. And these turned out, look at the beautiful sear on these. These were really beautiful chicken breast. Now we're going to make our dill sauce, and we're going to use the same pan. I am not using fresh dill. I'm just going to use a light teaspoon of the dried dill. That was some Dijon. We're going to use some sour cream, a couple tablespoons. And then you'll see this is not my bone broth, but I remembered that I had a little bit of cream of chicken soup in the freezer. So I actually used, you saw me, I think that was 3 tablespoons. And then I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of water just to get a little more sauciness going. And then over here on the cutting board, I'm just going to slice up these chicken breasts. And remember, these were kind of not the beautiful piece, and they're also very hot, as you can see. Just do the best you can on slicing these up. This one in particular is mini little pieces, but it's okay. It all tastes good. And I'm going to actually just throw that all in the sauce there and then mix it together so it's nicely coated. Now, the third component was another side of green beans, but because we had a big bag of green beans that we made the night before, I'm just going to reuse and eat the leftovers of the green beans from the night before. This is our potatoes. We are just flipping them over at the halfway point, and then they'll go back into the oven and they'll finish cooking. I think it was about 25 minutes. And another very satisfying, delicious HelloFresh meal. And this is definitely a winner for my husband, who at times really does want just meat and potatoes. So this fit the bill. It was delicious. And again, you probably have most everything that you need in your fridge or your pantry. This is definitely going into our rotation. And I actually will make it instead of just letting it sit in a recipe binder for years. I'm going to make this as part of my weekly rotation. Guys, I'll have all the recipes linked in the description down below. Everything will be time-stamped, so you can jump right to a certain recipe. And if you really like our content, come back next week when we've got another bunch of new recipes from the recipe stash.